Okay, let's go to an expert now. David MacNaughton is, of course, former Canadian ambassador to the United States. He's currently Canadian president of Palantir Technologies. He joins us now for Insight. Mr. MacNaughton, thank you very much for joining us. It's safe to say, I think, that Justin Trudeau, Chrystia Freeland, and the federal cabinet were perhaps more than ready for a new administration in Washington after the very difficult and unpredictable relationship that we had with Donald Trump and his White House. How much potential do you think there is here for a significant improvement, productive improvement in relations between Canada and the U.S.?
Well, I think there's huge potential. I mean, I think obviously the Prime Minister and the President get along well. They knew each other before. We had now President Biden up for a state dinner before the Obama administration left. So there's a familiarity and a genuinely cordial relationship. I think the other thing that happened yesterday, which was unique, was having cabinet members meet and agree to continue to have dialogue on specific topics. I mean, I think it's one thing to have good relationship between the President and the Prime Minister, but our relationship is so deep and so broad, you really need to have much more than that. And I think these sort of regular meetings that are going to happen between ministers is a really good idea, which I think will pay dividends in the future.
There are already irritants, of course, in the relationship from Canada's point of view. It seems impossible now to reverse the decision on the Keystone XL pipeline. But can Canada make progress on the Buy America intentions of the Biden administration? Those are requirements that some governments in the United States buy from American suppliers on, for instance, infrastructure projects rather than foreign suppliers. That seems to fly in the face of the principles of free trade. Can Canada win some relief from Biden's intention on Buy America?
Yeah, I think we can. I don't think we're going to get a full exemption, but I think if you look at, the facts, American companies and American goods supply something like 9% of our government procurement. So Canadian governments procure, in the total procurement they do on infrastructure, things like that, is 9% of it goes to Americans. In our case, it's 0.15 that we get of the American market. And so there's clearly a situation where we have some leverage in the sense that Americans do well because we don't have Buy Canada provisions in our procurement policies. And I think those are the kinds of things that I think when we remind American business and American legislators that, they shouldn't be cutting off their nose to spite their face, that actually we do have an integrated economy. I don't think, as I said, I don't think we'll get a full exemption, but I think we can work our way towards getting key elements of that not to apply to Canada. We went through that during the Trump administration with states. New York State tried it, Texas tried it, and we fought back on that. So I'm relatively optimistic that there can be some provisions that won't, put up, barriers to Canadians being able to compete on those things.
President Biden seemed to have plenty to say on the situation facing the two Michaels. These are, of course, the two Canadians who are detained in China, widely seen in this part of the world as unlawful detentions and politically motivated detentions. Human beings are not bartering chips, Joe Biden said. We're going to work together until we get their safe return. How meaningful is it, if at all, that the most powerful politician in the world said that about this situation?
Well, I think it's significant, and I think we need to obviously work hand in glove with the Americans on a whole range of issues that have to do with China. China remains a big market for our agricultural products and other things, as it does for the United States. But China has clearly taken some actions over the last several years, both in terms of its own domestic situation and in terms of the action against the two Michaels that is just totally unacceptable. And I think we can count on some more support from the Biden administration than we got in the past.
The two governments highlighted COVID-19 as an area that they'll begin collaborating on much more closely in the very near future. How much of an opportunity is the pandemic, as negative as it is for the populations of both countries, how much of a positive can it be to provide the two governments and the two countries the opportunity to work closely together?
Well, we have in the past worked very closely between some of our medical professionals and the U.S., the Center for Disease Control in Atlanta. And I think that what's happened with COVID is that it has emphasized the fact that we need to work much, much more closely together. There are a whole range of health issues that aren't just about the pandemic. There's opioid addiction, where it's a North American challenge. And I think, our two countries are inextricably linked. And trying to do it all ourselves and wall off our own actions and not collaborate with the Americans just doesn't make any sense. And so, it was difficult under the Trump administration because they were all so transactional, and he himself, didn't really believe in the word ally. It was all, just one deal at a time, and he had to be seen to be winning. And I think that the change in attitude in terms of genuine collaboration is important. I don't think it's going to be smooth sailing all the time. We're always going to have challenges when you've got as much trade back and forth and as many people moving back and forth. But I see this is a bit of a breath of fresh air, and I think it's an opportunity for us to solidify that very close relationship we have. One of the things we can't ignore is that was brought up by President Biden, and I think we have to pay attention to, is the Americans always talk about, we always talk about trade, they talk about security and defense. And I think Canada's got to continue to step up and step up more in terms of the protection of North America, the refresh of the NORAD agreement, and other things that are going to protect our continent.
What about pipelines? As we've noted, Keystone XL is dead. It seems highly unlikely that the administration can be convinced to reverse its decision there. But what about other cross-border pipelines?
Well, I think what you're seeing, in both Canada and the United States, is that it's extremely challenging to build energy infrastructure these days. I mean, whether it be, environmental opposition or NIMBY or indigenous, people who actually want either to be part of the solution or object to pipelines going through their backyard. I mean, this is not just a Canada-U.S. challenge. I think what would be helpful is if people would begin to rely on facts rather than just politics. I mean, the Keystone decision really had nothing to do with climate change. I mean, the reality is the United States, the Gulf Coast needs our heavy oil. If you really were basing this on climate change, you'd stop exporting heavy oil from California, which is dirtier than the oil sands oil, and you'd actually be importing it for Canada. So I think the more that we can collaborate and understand what the facts are and move towards common goals and take a lot of the politics out of it, it'll be very helpful. I mean, we're seeing it in Michigan at the present moment. We're seeing it, we saw it in Minnesota. I mean, there's a lot of opposition to building energy infrastructure, which is still very much necessary over the next few decades. So hopefully we can get back to more facts, more science, and less politics in these kinds of things. That would be kind of a refreshing